Well, shall I tell that story? It just happened to me. I mean, I didn't, for very good reasons, when I was about 16 and failing English, as I failed almost all my high school classes, I decided not to be a writer. I mean, it was clearly not something I wanted to try and do in my family. And I could also see that it was unbelievably, excruciatingly difficult, and that you spend most of your time worrying about how to pay your child's orthodontist bills. It didn't look like a good life to me, and I didn't think I was good at it, so I decided not to be a writer. And I became a high school English teacher, and I was very, very happy as a high school English teacher. In fact, it's been interesting for me now, 40 years later, to get back to teaching and see how much I love it. Anyway, one thing led to another, and this is sort of proof of the existence of God. I was a high school English teacher, and then I married a writer. And so I had to get out of the teaching schedule, and I became a housewife. I was very happy. In those days, women weren't supposed to have to work. Dinosaurs walked the earth, and I learned how to make chicken baked in sour cream, and have people for dinner, and I was very pleased with that. And then there came a time, I think we're still in the 60s, when my husband couldn't quite support us, so I had to go look for work, which I thought was really not okay. I applied for a lot of jobs. I made macrame belts for the local ski shop. I tried to get a job at the Reader's Digest, but somehow they wouldn't hire me. I went to an employment agency, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Finally, I got a job on the local newspaper, a place with 4 reporters and a composing room in the back and a press on the first floor, and an editor who happened to be just one of the most brilliant guys I ever worked for. And so I started writing weddings and funerals. And within about a week, I was the police reporter, and then I became the education reporter, and I fell in love with that. I just loved it. And this guy taught me, I don't want to say he taught me, so many people taught me everything I know about writing, but he's one of them. And we had a ball, us 4 reporters. And of course, when you're writing for a daily paper in a small town, Tarrytown, New York it was, you're read with an intensity which you will never be read with again. I mean, I remember some guy reading the paper and walking off the curb because he was reading a story of mine about a school board meeting. So anyway, then I knew I was a journalist, and I started being very ambitious. I worked my way up from Tarrytown to White Plains, and et cetera, and finally ended up, 10 years later at Newsweek. And people would say, "Oh, isn't that sweet? Your father's a writer and you're a writer too." And I would gag and say, "I'm a journalist." And fortunately for me, he would never write journalism. So I felt it was completely different. And I was at Newsweek for what seemed like about 100 years, but it was really only 5. And at the end of that time, I was 35 years old, and I just got incredibly restless at Newsweek. I thought I had to write a piece that was longer than 300 words. I had to write something that wasn't going to be edited by 4 or 5 people. I didn't know what it was, but I began to define happiness as the ability to write something longer than 500 words that wouldn't be edited by 3 people. And at that point, the man who became my second husband, we've been talking about my first husband, suggested that we run away together, which was necessary because I think we were both married to, anyway, it was necessary for a lot of reasons. And so we did. And we ran away to France, off season. I sold my car, scraped together whatever I could. And I sat down and, almost to my surprise, wrote a novel.